What horrors did Vatican exorcists face, so disturbing that the Church locked the reports away forever? Welcome to Pillow Historian. Tonight, ask yourself, if evil truly walks among us, what secrets are hidden in files even popes fear to read aloud? You're curled up, maybe with a blanket, the world outside fading as shadows stretch across your room. The air feels heavier, doesn't it? Like something's watching from the corner, just beyond your lamp's glow. Don't worry, you probably won't survive this tale unscathed, but let's make it fun. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your location and local time in the comments. I'm curious where you're listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing in Rome, the eternal city, where ancient stones whisper secrets under a moonlit sky. The Vatican looms. Ahead, its dome silhouetted against the stars. You're not here for a tour. No, you're sneaking into the Vatican's secret archives, a place where even cardinals tread lightly. The air smells of old parchment and wax, and your footsteps echo on marble floors. You've heard rumors files so dangerous they're locked in iron boxes, accessible only to a select few. These are the Exorcist files, accounts of battles against forces most deny exist. Your heart pounds as you slip past a sleeping guard. His snore's a soft rhythm in the dark. You're not supposed to be here, but curiosity pulls you deeper. The archives are a labyrinth, shelves stretching into shadows, each one holding centuries of secrets. You find a dusty ledger. It's leather, cover cracked with age. Inside, names of priests, dates, and cryptic notes. Subject unbound. Entity hostile. Your fingers tremble as you turn the pages. These aren't fairy tales. These are real reports, written by Vatican-trained exorcists who faced what theologians call the adversary. You pause at a name, Father Matteo, 1973. His case is marked sealed by order of the Holy See. Why? What did he see that the Church wants buried? Let's rewind. The Vatican's been dealing with exorcisms since the early Church, when apostles cast out spirits in Jesus' name. By the 4th century, exorcism was a formal rite, codified to combat what priests believed were demonic intrusions. Fact check. The Ritual Romanum, established in 1614, standardized exorcism procedures, and it's still in use today. But here's a quirky tidbit: some medieval exorcists used consecrated bells, believing their chimes could drive demons away. Imagine that. A demon fleeing because Father Giovanni got a bit too enthusiastic with his bell ringing. Historians still argue whether these early rituals were spiritual warfare or just misunderstood mental health crises. You wonder, as you clutch the ledger, which side Matteo landed on. You slip the ledger under your jacket and move deeper into the archives. The air grows colder, and your breath catches. A faint whisper your name? No, just the wind, right? You? Find a locked cabinet, its iron surface etched with crosses. This is it, the forbidden section. You don't have a key, but you've got a hairpin and a questionable moral compass. As you fumble with the lock, you imagine Matteo, a young priest in a small Italian village, facing something that made the Vatican slam this cabinet shut. Did he win? Or did he lose something worse than his life? The lock clicks open. Inside, a single file, yellowed and heavy with dust. You open it, and Matteo's handwriting stares back neat at first, then frantic. "It knows my name," he writes. Your stomach twists. You're not just reading history. You're stepping into it. The file details his first case. A woman named Clara, 32, who spoke in languages she'd never learned. You picture her, eyes wild, voice echoing in a candlelit room. Matteo's notes mention a presence that mocked his faith, taunting him with secrets only he knew. You shiver, glancing over your shoulder. Is that fan still humming, or is it something else? You keep reading, the words pulling you in. Clara's possession began after a trip to an old shrine, one the locals avoided. Matteo describes her symptoms: unnatural strength, visions of fire, and a laugh that didn't sound human. He tried the standard rites, holy water, prayers, the crucifix, but something fought back. You imagine him, sweating, his collar tight, as Clara's voice shifted to a growl. "You're weak, Matteo," it said. You wonder how he kept going. Would you? Let's be real. You'd probably be halfway to Naples by now, clutching a gelato. For emotional support, the file includes sketches Clara's face, twisted in ways faces shouldn't twist. Matteo notes the Vatican's response. They sent a senior exorcist, Father Lorenzo, to oversee the case. Lorenzo's report is clipped, professional, but you catch a hint of fear in his word choice. Entity uncooperative? Uncooperative? That's what you call a demon who's redecorating someone's soul. You smirk, but it's a nervous one. The file ends abruptly with a note: case unresolved. File sealed. You're left hanging, the cabinet looming like it's daring you to dig deeper. You close the file, your hands clammy. The archives feel alive now, the shadows thicker. You're not alone, are you? That's just your imagination, hyped up on late-night vibes and too much coffee. Or is it? You tuck the file away and retrace your steps, the ledger still under your jacket. Matteo's story is just the beginning, and you're already in too deep. The Vatican's walls seem to watch you leave, their silence louder than any scream. You step into the Roman night, the city buzzing with life, but all you hear is that whisper from the archives. It's not done with you yet. You're back in 1973, a sleepy Italian village nestled in the hills, where the air smells of olive groves and wood smoke. You're not just visiting, you're in Father Matteo's shoes, a rookie priest barely 26, his cassock still stiff from the tailor. You feel the weight of his new role, the villagers' eyes on you as you walk cobblestone streets, your polished shoes clicking too loudly. They nod, call you Padre, but their smiles are tight. Something's wrong here, and you're about to find out what. Your first exorcism case awaits, and it's not the warm welcome you expected after seminary. The church looms ahead, its stone walls weathered by centuries, the bell tower silent under a cloudy sky. You clutch your breviary, its leather warm. In your hands, but it feels flimsy against what's coming. The village priest, Father Antonio, summoned you last night. His letter was curt. Clara, 32, afflicted. Come at once. Your trained Vatican courses, endless Latin, lectures on demons, but training's one thing. The real deal? That's the cold sweat trickling down your spine as you push open the church's oak door, its hinges groaning like a warning. Inside, the air's thick with incense and fear. Candles flicker on the altar, casting shadows that dance like they've got plans of their own. Antonio's there, his face carved with worry, his white hair a mess. She's in the rectory, he whispers, pointing to a side door. You nod, trying to look confident, but your stomach's doing flips. You're picturing Clara-normal Clara, maybe a baker or a seamstress, not whatever's waiting beyond that door. You joke to yourself, what's next? A demon asking for gluten-free holy water? It's a weak laugh, but it keeps you moving. The rectory's a small room, all dark wood and crucifixes. Claire is there, tied to a chair with thick ropes, her dark hair plastered to her face. She's still, too still, her head bowed. You expect screaming, maybe levitating furniture things, Hollywood, but this quiet unnerves you more. Her family's in the corner, a mother clutching a rosary, a brother staring at the floor. Antonio mutters, "It started 2 weeks ago, after the shrine." You remember the file from the archives, that old shrine the locals shun. You're piecing it together, but the puzzle's got claws. You step closer, your voice steady as you begin the rite of exorcism. In nomen patris, the Latin feels heavy, like lifting stones. Clara's head snaps up, and you freeze. Her eyes, God, her eyes are wrong, too wide, too black, like they're swallowing the light. She smiles, and it's not Clara's. Smile. "Matteo," she says, her voice a low hum that shouldn't come from a human throat. You flinch. She shouldn't know your name. Nobody here calls you Matteo, just Padre. You keep praying, but your hands shake, the crucifix slippery in your grip. Let's pause for a fact. Exorcisms in the 1970s were tightly regulated by the Vatican, with bishops required to approve each case after medical evaluations. Quirky tidbit? Some priests back then carried exorcism kits, little leather bags with holy water vials, blessed salt, and even tiny mirrors to trap evil spirits. Imagine you fumbling with a mirror, hoping it's not just reflecting your terrified face. Historians still argue whether possessions like Clara's were demonic or psychological dissociative disorders. Maybe, or epilepsy misread by zealous clergy. You're not sure where you stand, but Clara's next move doesn't feel like a medical. Footnote. She laughs, a sound like breaking glass, and the room feels smaller. "You're new," she says, her voice shifting, now male, now old, now a child's. You sprinkle holy water, and she hisses, straining against the ropes. The chair creaks, and you half expect it to splinter. Antonio's praying behind you, his voice a lifeline, but you're the one in the ring. You try to focus, reciting Psalm 91. You will not fear the terror of the night, but Clara or whatever's inside her interrupts. Your mother cried when you left for Rome. She says, you stumble over the words. Nobody here knows about your mother, her tears at the train station. You push on, but doubt creeps in. Is this real? You glance at the family. The mother's sobbing, her rosary beads clicking like a countdown. The brother's muttering, it's not her, it's not her. You want to believe this is just Clara, sick, not possessed. But then she speaks in Latin fluent rapid, a dialect you barely recognize from your studies. Clara's a villager, no scholar. You're no linguist, but you know she shouldn't be spitting out 4th-century phrases like she's possessed by a Roman senator. You joke to yourself, great, now I'm failing Latin in exorcism. It's gallows humor, but it keeps your knees from buckling. The room's getting hotter, or maybe it's just you. The candles are burning low, wax pooling like blood. You try another prayer, the one your mentor swore by. Exorcizo te, immundicem spiritus. Clara's body jerks, her back arching so sharply you hear a crack. You wince, expecting bones to break, but she just laughs again. You're boring me, Matteo, she says, and the ropes loosen. Just a fraction. You don't know how. You're supposed to be in control, but it feels like it is. You sprinkle more holy water, and this time, she screams a sound that claws. At your eardrums, raw and animal. The family gasps, and you nearly drop the aspergillum. You're hours into this now, your throat dry, your voice hoarse. Antonio's fading, his prayers softer, like he's running out of steam. You're not sure how much longer you can go. Clara's still fighting, her body twisting in ways that defy anatomy. You catch a glimpse of her face briefly. It's just Clara, scared, human, her eyes pleading. It's gone in a second, replaced by that mocking grin. You cling to that moment, telling yourself she's still in there. You have to save her. But the entity's not done. You'll fail, it says, and it names your childhood dog, the one that died when you were 10. You're shaking now, and not just from exhaustion. You try a new tactic, invoking Saint Michael. Holy Michael, Archangel, defend us in battle. The room shakes, actually shakes, the walls trembling. A picture of the Virgin Mary crashing to the floor. You're not imagining it. Antonio's wide-eyed, the family screaming. You keep going, louder, your voice cracking but firm. Clara's body slumps, just for a moment, and you think, maybe, it's working. But then she lunges, snapping one rope, her hand grabbing your wrist. Her grip's like iron, her nails digging in. You're mine, she whispers, and you feel it a cold, heavy weight, like something's crawling into your soul. You wrench free, stumbling back, your heart hammering. Antonio's shouting, keep going. You do, because what else can? You do? You're in too deep, and running's not an option. You pray harder, your voice raw, the words blending into a desperate chant. Clara's weakening. You think her movement's slower, her voice fainter. Or maybe you're just hoping. The night drags on, the candles gone, the room lit only by dawn's gray light creeping through the window. You're exhausted, but you can't stop. Not when Clara's still fighting, not when that thing is still there, watching you. Finally, Clara collapses, her body limp, her breathing shallow but human. You're not sure if you won or just survived. Antonio's at her side, checking her pulse, murmuring thanks to God. The family's crying, but it's relief, not fear. You want to feel victorious, but you're hollow. That voice, those eyes, they're burned into you. You step outside, the morning air cool on your face, the village waking up like nothing happened. You joke, well, at least I didn't faint, but it's a lie. You're changed, and you know it. Clara's alive, but the file said unresolved. You're starting to understand why. Section 3. You're still in that Italian village, 1973, but the air feels different now, heavier with the weight of what you've seen. Father Matteo's first exorcism left you rattled, and you're not sure you're ready for more. But you're not done digging. You're standing outside the village church, the dawn light painting the hills gold, and you're wondering, where did this all begin? Not just Clara's possession, but the whole exorcism gained centuries of priests battling. Shadows with words and water. You slip back into Matteo's world, but this time, you're chasing the roots of the rite itself, the ancient bones of the Vatican's strangest tradition. You're walking through Rome now, not the Rome of tourists and gelato, but a Rome of the 4th century, where the streets smell of sweat and sacrifice. You're a bystander in a dusty basilica, watching a priest in rough robes face a trembling man tied to a bench. The crowd murmurs, their eyes wide with fear and faith. The priest's chanting in Latin, his voice steady, but his hands shaking, holding a wooden cross that looks like it's seen better days. This is exorcism in its infancy, raw and unpolished, before the Vatican turned it into a rule book. You feel the crowd's tension, the way they lean in, half expecting a miracle, half ready to bolt. The rite's older than this, though. You're pulled back further, to the 1st century, following a wandering preacher in Galilee. You're there, when he faces a man in a synagogue, one who screams in a voice not his own. "What have you to do with us, Jesus of Nazareth?" The voice demands. You're stunned as Jesus speaks, calm but commanding. Be silent and come out of him. The man collapses free, and you're left blinking in the desert sun, wondering what you just saw. This is the seed, the moment exorcism became a Christian act. Fact check. The gospel accounts of Jesus casting out demons, like in Mark 1:23-26, are the blueprint for every exorcism since. Quirky tidbit? Early Christians sometimes used fish oil in rituals, believing its stench repelled evil spirits. Imagine. Matteo trying that Clara would have had a whole new reason to scream. You're back in Matteo's time now, sitting in his cramped room above the rectory. He's hunched over a desk, a single candle flickering, his notes scattered like leaves. You see him scribbling, trying to make sense of Clara's case by studying the rite's history. His books are ancient, their pages brittle, smelling of mold and secrets. One's a copy of the Ritual Romanum, the 1614 playbook that's still the Vatican's go-to. You read over his shoulder, prayers, gestures, warnings about discernment. Matteo underlines a line, "The exorcist must not proceed unless certain of possession." You feel his doubt, the same doubt you had watching. Clara's eyes. Was it real? Or was it something else? You're curious, so you follow Matteo to a meeting with Father Antonio, the old priest who's seen too much. They're in the church sacristy, surrounded by vestments and chalices, the air thick with wax and worry. Antonio's voice is low, his eyes darting to the door. "The rite's changed," he says. "In the old days, we didn't ask so many questions." You listen as he describes medieval exorcisms, when priests used everything from relics to flogging to drive out demons. You wince, imagining a whip in Matteo's hands. Thankfully, that's long gone. Antonio pulls out a small book, its cover worn to threads. "This," he says, "is from the 9th century, the first written rite." You lean in, seeing crude drawings of demons, their claws exaggerated, their eyes too human. The book's instructions are brutal. Fast for days, pray, until you collapse, and never, ever speak the demon's name. You're struck by how little has changed. Matteo's still fasting, still praying, still avoiding names. But there's a difference. Antonio points to a modern Vatican memo on his desk, dated 1969. It's a reminder. Get a doctor's sign-off before any exorcism. You smirk bureaucracy, even in spiritual warfare. Historians still argue whether this shift saved lives or diluted the rite's power. Did the church lose faith in its own weapons? You're not sure, but Matteo's face says he's caught in the middle. You're pulled into a memory Antonio shares, a story from his mentor in the 1940s. You're in a Sicilian village, watching a priest named Father Paolo perform an exorcism on a fisherman who roared like a storm. Paolo didn't use ropes or chairs. He knelt, prayed, and sang psalms until the man wept and was free. You're moved by the simplicity, the trust in words over theatrics. Antonio sighs, "We've added rules, but lost something." You wonder if Matteo feels it too, this tug between faith and formula. You're back in his room, watching him. Read, his candle now a stub. He's circling a phrase in the Ritual Romanum. The demon lies. You feel a chill, remembering Clara's voice, her taunts about Matteo's mother, his dog. Lies or truth too sharp to face. You're walking with Matteo now through the village at dusk, the sky bruised with clouds. He's heading to Clara's house, summoned again. You feel his dread, the way his rosary beads click in his pocket, a nervous habit. The rite's history weighs on him, centuries of priests, successes, failures, and files locked away. You're at Clara's door, and it's open, just a crack. Inside, you hear a low hum, not quite human. Matteo pauses, And you do too, your heart racing. He's clutching the ritual Romanum like a shield, but you both know it's only as strong as his belief. You're about to step inside when a villager grabs his arm. "Padre, don't," she whispers. "It's worse tonight." You exchange a look with Matteo, and you're not sure who's more scared. You're in the room now. Clara's there, not tied this time, sitting calmly. Too calmly. Her smile's back, and it's not hers. You're struck by how the rites. Evolved Jesus didn't need ropes. Medieval priests didn't need memos. But Matteo's got both, and he's still outmatched. You watch him begin, his voice steadier than last time, but the air's thick, like it's resisting his words. Clara's head tilts, and she speaks not in Latin, but Italian, soft and venomous. "You think your old prayers scare me?" You're frozen, realizing the rite's power isn't in the words, but in the priest. And Matteo's still learning. You're pulled back to the 4th century again. A quick flash, watching that early priest finish his exorcism. The man's free, the crowd cheering, but the priest's eyes are haunted. You're back with Matteo, and you see that same look. The rites. Ancient, but its cost is timeless. You're exhausted, just watching, but Matteo's living it. He keeps praying, and you're rooting for him, even as Clara's smile widens. You joke to yourself, "Maybe I should have stayed in Rome, sipping espresso." But you're here, and so is Matteo, and the night's just beginning. You're back in that dim village room, 1973, the air thick with the scent of melted wax and fear. Father Matteo's facing Clara again, his voice steady, but his hands trembling as he clutches the crucifix. You're not just watching, you're in his head, feeling the weight of her unnatural smile, the way her eyes seem to peel back your secrets. This isn't about ancient rites anymore. It's about what's happening now. A demon's cunning. Its psychological tricks sinking claws into Matteo's faith. You're about to see how it plays dirty, how it twists truth and doubt into weapons sharper than any claw. Clara sitting, untied, her posture too perfect, like a doll arranged by unseen hands. You notice the room's details, the cracked plaster walls, a faded icon of St. Anthony, the faint hum of crickets outside. Matteo's praying, but Clara interrupts, her voice soft, almost sweet. "You're tired, Matteo," she says. "Why fight for her? She's gone." You feel his pulse spike. He knows she means Clara, the real Clara, trapped somewhere inside. You're struck by the entity's tactic, not violence, but words, each one a needle. You're nervous, wondering how Matteo will hold up when it's not about Latin or holy water, but his own resolve. The entity shifts gears. "Remember your sister?" It says, and you see Matteo flinch. You're pulled into a memory, his memory. A summer day, a teenage Matteo arguing with his older sister, Elena, over something trivial, like who ate the last fig. She stormed off, and he never apologized. She's fine now, married, living in Florence, but the guilt lingers, a crack in his armor. You're back in the room, and Clara's smiling wider. "She hates you," the voice says. You know it's a lie, but Matteo's face says it stings. You're starting to get it. This thing doesn't just possess bodies. It possesses your past, twisting memories into traps. You're sweating, even though the room's cold. Matteo keeps praying, but his rhythm's off, like he's second-guessing every word. The entity's relentless. "Your mother's sick," it says. You left her alone. You feel Matteo's panic. You know his mother's frail, always coughing, but he wrote her last week, and she was fine, wasn't she? You're caught in his doubt, wondering if this thing knows something he doesn't. Fact check. The Vatican's 1614 Ritual Romanum warns that demons are masters of deceit, often using personal details to unsettle exorcists. Corky tidbit? Some 17th century priests wore blindfolds during exorcisms to avoid the demon's gaze, believing it could read their fears. You imagine Matteo trying that, stumbling over furniture, and you smirk nervous humor, your only defense. Clara's voice changes, now mimicking Alana's. You are always selfish, it says, and you see Matteo's jaw tighten. You're in his head, feeling the memory resurface Alana's disappointed eyes. The way she called him spoiled that summer. You're angry for him. This isn't fair. But fairness isn't the game. The entity's goal is to break him, to make him doubt his calling. You're rooting for Matteo, but you're scared. What if it knows your secrets? You push the thought away, focusing on the room, the way the candlelight flickers like it's scared too. Matteo tries a new prayer, invoking Saint Benedict, but Clara laughs a sharp, barking sound that makes you jump. You think he can help? She says, and spits on the floor. The spit sizzles, or maybe you're imagining it. But the room feels wrong, the air too thick, like you're breathing through a cloth. Matteo's mentor, Father Antonio, is in the corner, praying softly, but he looks pale, his hands shaking. You realize this isn't just about Matteo. The entity's testing everyone. You're tempted to whisper, "Come on, Antonio, back him up." But you're just a ghost here, watching the fight unfold. The entity switches tactics again, going for Matteo's pride. You're no exorcist, it says. You're a boy, playing priest. You feel the sting. Matteo's young, barely ordained, and the village whispers about his inexperience. You're pulled into another memory. His first mass a month ago, and he dropped the chalice, wine spilling like blood on the altar cloth. The congregation stared, and he burned with shame. You're back, and Clara's eyes are locked on him, gleaming. They laugh at you, she says. You want to shake Matteo, tell him it's lies, but he's faltering. His prayers slower, his voice thin. You're desperate for him to fight back. And he does, sort of. He sprinkles holy water, and Clara flinches, her body jerking like a puppet. With cut strings, you cheer silently, but it's short-lived. She recovers, her voice now a growl. You'll fail Clara, like you failed your father. You freeze. Matteo's father died when he was a kid, a heart attack. Nothing Matteo could have stopped. But you feel the guilt he carries, the what-ifs that haunt him. You're in his memory, now a hospital room. A 10-year-old Matteo crying is his. Father flatlined. You're back, and Clara's grinning, knowing she hit a nerve. You're furious, but you're also scared. This thing's good too good. Historians still argue whether demonic possession is supernatural or psychological manipulation. Some say it's just the mind exploiting guilt. Others swear it's otherworldly. You're torn, watching Matteo struggle. Is this a demon, or is Clara's mind weaponizing his fears? Either way, it's winning. You notice the family's gone quiet. Clara's mother clutching her rosary so hard her knuckles are white. You want to comfort her, but you're stuck, trapped in Matteo's fight. He tries again, chanting Psalm 23. Though I walk through the valley. But Clara interrupts, mimicking his mother's voice. You left me, Matteo. You see him tear up, and your heart breaks. You joke to yourself. Great, now I'm crying over a demon's family drama. It's a weak laugh, but it keeps. You grounded. The night drags on, the candles burning low, their wax pooling like tears. Matteo's exhausted, his cassock damp with sweat. You're tired too, just watching, but you can't look away. The entity's relentless, cycling through voices. Elena, his mother, his father, each one a dagger. You're alone, it says. Finally, and you feel Matteo's loneliness, the weight of his vows, the village that respects but doesn't love him. You're in his head, and it's dark, a place where doubt grows like mold. But then something shifts. Matteo stops praying, looks at Clara, not the entity, but Clara. "I see you," he says, soft but firm. "You're stunned." He's talking. To her, the woman trapped inside. Clara's eyes flicker, just for a second, and you see her scared, human, fighting. The entity roars, a sound that shakes the walls, and you're sure the roof will cave. Matteo keeps going, his voice stronger. "Clara, you're not alone." You're cheering now, silently, because this is it, his first real counterattack. The entity's thrown, its taunts less sharp. You realize Matteo's found its weakness. Connection, not just prayers. He's not fighting the demon. He's fighting for Clara. You're proud, but you're also nervous. This isn't over. The entity's quiet now, but you know it's plotting, waiting for Matteo to slip. You're at the edge of the room, the dawn light creeping in, and you're bracing for what's next, knowing Matteo's in deeper than ever. You're still in that oppressive village room, 1973, the dawn light barely cutting through the gloom. Father Matteo's found his footing, speaking directly to Clara, not the entity clawing at her soul. You're in his corner, heart pounding, as the air hums with something new hope, maybe, or just desperation. But now you're slipping away from this fight, pulled into the shadows of the Vatican's secret archives. You're not here for Matteo's battle anymore. You're hunting a forbidden's case file, one so dangerous it's locked away from even the bravest exorcists. Your hands are clammy, the archives chill sinking into your bones as you search for answers the church doesn't want you to find. You're in Rome, the eternal city asleep under a starless sky. The Vatican's walls loom, their silence louder than any bell. You're sneaking through a side gate, your breath catching as you dodge a guard's flashlight. The secret archives are a maze of shelves, each one groaning under centuries of secrets. You smell old leather and dust, the kind that clings to your throat. Your flashlight beam dances over labels, papal bulls, heretic trials, but you're after something darker. A file marked Clara, 1973, sits in a locked iron box, its surface etched with warnings in Latin. Nia Pirius. Don't open. You smirk, muttering, "Yeah, like that's stopping me." It's bravado, but your hands shake as you pick the lock with a bent hairpin. The box creaks open, revealing a single dossier, its edges yellowed, its weight heavy in your hands. You open it, and Matteo's handwriting greets you, frantic and smudged. "Case unresolved," he writes, but there's more pages of coded notes, sketches of Clara's twisted face, and a Vatican seal, restricted by order of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith. You're in deep now, no turning back. The file details Clara's possession, but it's not just her story. It's a window into why the Vatican buries these cases, why even popes fear their contents. You're about to learn what Matteo faced, and what he couldn't defeat. You settle into a shadowed corner, the archive's silence pressing against you. The file describes Clara's symptoms. Voices, strength, knowledge shouldn't have. But there's a twist. Matteo notes a secondary presence, something older, stronger, that didn't just possess Clara but watched him. You shiver, imagining eyes in the dark, not Clara's, but something else. Matteo writes, "It spoke my sins." You're pulled into his memory, a flash of the exorcism. Clara's voice, low and mocking, listing Matteo's doubts, his envy of a classmate's promotion, his anger at a bishop's rebuke. You feel his shame, the way it choked his prayers. You're back in the archive, and the file's next page is worse. It knew the village's secrets, too. You read on, your flashlight flickering like it's nervous. Matteo describes Clara, naming sins of others, her brother's theft, her mother's affair, things no one could know. A village turned on itself, neighbors whispering, trust crumbling. You're struck by the entity's strategy. not just breaking Clara, but fracturing. A community. Fact check. The Vatican's 1999 exorcism guidelines emphasized discernment, warning that demons exploit social bonds to sow chaos. Quirky tidbit? In the 18th century, some exorcists used truth candles, believing their flames dimmed. When a demon lied, you picture Matteo with one, squinting at a flickering wick, and chuckle nervous laughter, your only shield. The file shifts to Matteo's report to his superiors. You're in his memory. A stuffy Vatican office, 1973. He's facing a Monsignor, his cassock too big for his frame. It's not just Clara, Matteo says, voice cracking. It's bigger. The Monsignor's face hardens, his pen scratching a note. File sealed. You're back in the archive. And you get it? The Vatican didn't want this spreading. Historians still argue whether the Church hides exorcism files to protect faith or to cover its failures. You're leaning toward the latter, but the files. Next section pulls you deeper. A letter from Father Lorenzo, the senior exorcist sent to help Matteo. Lorenzo's letter is cold, clinical, but you catch fear in his words. The entity is ancient, he writes. It toys with us. You're in Lorenzo's memory now, a second exorcism session. Clara's not tied, but she's still, her eyes locked on Lorenzo. You're next, she whispers, and you feel Lorenzo's. Dread, a man who's faced demons, but never one like this. You're back, and the file notes Lorenzo's sudden transfer to a remote monastery. Coincidence? You don't think so. You're starting to see why this file's locked Clara's case. Wasn't just a possession. It was a warning. You turn the page, and a sketch falls out. A symbol, a circle with jagged lines, drawn in Matteo's shaky hand. He writes, found on Clara's arm. Not a tattoo. You're uneasy, recognizing it from nowhere specific, just a gut feeling. The file mentions a shrine, the one Clara visited before her possession. Matteo investigated it, finding old stones carved with that same symbol. You're there with him. At the shrine, its air heavy with rot. The stones feel alive, watching. Matteo writes, locals call it cursed. You're back in the archive. And you're sure this shrine's the key, but the Vatican's note is clear. Investigation terminated. You're halfway through the file, and it's heavier now, like it's absorbing the room's shadows. Matteo describes the entities. Final taunt. You'll carry me, priest. You feel his fear, the idea that he didn't just fight it, he might have let it in. You're in his memory again. The exorcisms end. Clara's free, slumped, human again, but Matteo's eyes are hollow. He writes, I feel it still. You're back, and the file ends with a Vatican order. Father Matteo reassigned. Case closed. You're angry reassigned? After that, you know it's not over. Not for Matteo, not for Clara, not for you. You close the file, your hands cold. The archive feels smaller, the shelves closer, like they're listening. You joke. Well, at least I didn't get possessed yet. It's weak, but it keeps you moving. You slip the file back, relock the box, and retrace your steps. The guard snores your only company. You're out, the Roman night cool on your face, but the symbol's burned into your mind. You're carrying it, just like Matteo carried. His doubts. The Vatican's secrets are safe, for now, but you're not done digging, and something tells you the shadows aren't done with you. You're no longer in the Vatican's shadowy archives, clutching forbidden's files. No, you're in a stark, sunlit courtyard in Rome, 1973, where the air smells of dust and olive trees. You're trailing Father Matteo, but this isn't about Clara's possession anymore. You're diving into the grueling secret training that turned Matteo from a wide-eyed seminarian into a Vatican exorcist. Your heart's racing, not from demons, but from the sheer intensity of what you're about to witness. a process so brutal, it breaks more priests than it builds. You're in Matteo's shoes, feeling the weight of a calling that's as much curse as honor. You're standing in a cloistered compound, hidden behind high walls near the Vatican. The courtyard's lined with stone benches, a crucifix towering at its center. You're surrounded by a dozen other trainees young priests, their faces a mix of zeal and dread. A grizzled Monsignor, Father Vincenzo, paces before you, his eyes. Like flint, you're not here to play heroes, he barks. You're here to face hell. You swallow hard. Matteo's nerve's yours now. The training's a gauntlet. Months of spiritual, physical, and psychological tests designed to forge exorcists who won't crack under a demon's gaze. You're not sure you'd sign up, but Matteo's all in. His rosary beads clicking in his pocket dot the day begins with prayer hours of it. You're kneeling on cold stone, reciting Latin psalms until your knees ache and your voice cracks. The words blur, but you keep going because Vincenzo's watching, and he's not kind to slackers. You're exhausted, and it's only noon. Next comes fasting strict, relentless. You're allowed water and a crust of bread, nothing more. Your stomach growls, and you joke to yourself, "Great, I'm starving for salvation." It's a weak laugh, but it keeps you from fainting. Fact check. The Vatican's exorcist training, formalized in the 20th century, includes fasting to mimic early Christian ascetics, believed to strengthen spiritual resolve. Quirky tidbit? Some trainees were given holy vinegar to sip, thought, to burn away worldly attachments. You imagine the taste and wince pass. You're pulled into a lecture hall, its walls lined with ancient texts. Vincenzo's teaching gammonology, his voice low, like he's afraid the words might summon something. You learn about entities legion, named, unnamed, and their tricks. Lies, flattery, fear. You're scribbling notes, Matteo's hand cramping. As Vincenzo describes a 16th century case where a demon mimicked a priest's dead mother, breaking him mid-exorcism. You feel Matteo's unease, wondering if he's strong enough. Historians still argue whether these lessons are divine wisdom or medieval superstition repackaged. You're not sure, but the way Vincenzo's eyes dart to the door makes you lean toward the former. Now you're in a mock exorcism, the real test. You're paired with another trainee, Luca, a lanky Sicilian with shaky hands. You're playing the exorcist, Luca the possessed, coached by Vincenzo to act the part. Luca's good too good. He growls, spits, and calls you by naming, a voice that's not his. Matteo, you're weak, he sneers, and you feel a chill, even knowing it's fake. You recite the rite of exorcism, your voice wobbling, and sprinkle water, not holy, just tap. Luca laughs, and you fumble the crucifix, dropping it. Vincenzo's glare could melt stone. Again, he says, you're humiliated, but you try. And try until your throat's raw and Luca's out of taunts. The days blur prayer, fasting, lectures, simulations. You're losing weight, sleep, and maybe a bit of sanity. One night, you're in a chapel, alone, tasked with a vigil. You're praying, but your mind wanders to home. Your mother's voice, the life you left. The candles flicker, and you swear. You hear a whisper, not your name, but close. You're spooked, telling yourself it's just exhaustion. But Matteo's not so sure, and neither are you. You're starting to understand why half the trainees quit. You're in a mess hall now, sipping watery soup when Luca leans over. They want us broken, he whispers. So demons can't. Break us later. You nod, but you're not convinced it's working. You're back in the courtyard, weeks into training, facing a new test. Confession under pressure. Vincenzo pairs you with a senior exorcist, Father Paolo, who's heard it. All. You're confessing sins, petty ones, like stealing a cookie as a kid, and deeper ones, like resenting your father's death. Paolo's silent, but his presence pulls truth from you. You're vulnerable, and that's the point exorcists must. Face their shadows before facing hell's. You're shaken, but Matteo's stronger for it, his doubts laid bare. You're proud, but you're also scared. What if this isn't enough? The final test looms. A supervised exorcism, not real, but close. You're in a locked room, Vincenzo and Paolo watching. Luca's possessed again, but this time, props are involved: ropes, a chair, a fake holy water vial. Luca's thrashing, screaming in gibberish, and you're supposed to stay calm, recite the rite, and save him. Your hands shake, but you start, your voice louder than you expect. Exorcizo te. Luca's eyes lock on yours, and for a second, you swear they're not his. You keep going, ignoring the sweat on your brow, the way the room feels too small. You finish, and Luca slumps, freed. Vincenzo nods, a rare approval. You're elated, but your hands won't stop shaking. You're outside now, the training over, Matteo certified as an exorcist. The courtyard's quiet, the crucifix casting a long shadow. You feel his relief, but also his fear he's ready. But for what? You're back in the village, 1973. Matteo, preparing for Clara's next session. The training's in his bones now. But you know it's not enough. You joke, well, at least he's got holy vinegar on speed dial. It's a nervous chuckle, because you're both heading back into the fight, and the real demons don't play by Vincenzo's rules. You're back in the Italian village, 1973, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and fear. Father Matteo's training is behind him, but now you're in the heart of a new storm. You're not facing demons or archives, you're grappling with a case that blurs the line between possession and madness. Clara's gone, her fate unresolved, but a new name haunts Matteo. Giovanni, a local farmer, 45, whose family swears he's possessed. You're in Matteo's shoes, standing outside Giovanni's crumbling farmhouse, the moon casting jagged shadows. Your gut twists as you wonder, is this evil, or something human medicine can explain? The answer's not clear, and that's what scares you most. You knock, and Giovanni's wife, Maria, opens the door, her eyes red from crying. He's not himself, she whispers, leading you inside. The house smells of stale wine and neglect, its walls stained with time. Giovanni's in the kitchen, slumped at a table, his hands gripping a rosary so tightly his knuckles are white. He's muttering, not prayers, but nonsense words that sound like Latin but aren't. You feel Matteo's unease, his training screaming possession, but something's off. Giovanni's eyes aren't wild like Clara's. They're empty, like he's lost somewhere inside himself. You're torn, and so is Matteo, between the right he knows and the doubt gnawing at him. You sit across from Giovanni, your crucifix heavy in your pocket. Maria hovers, her voice trembling as she recounts the change weeks ago. Giovanni stopped sleeping, started shouting at shadows, claiming they spoke to him. You listen, but you're also watching Giovanni, noticing his tremors, the way his head jerks slightly. Matteo's trained to spot demonic signs, unnatural strength, secret knowledge, but Giovanni's just broken. You're pulled into a memory, Matteo's, from training. Father Vincenzo warning, not every scream is a demon. Some are the mind's. You're starting to wonder if this is one of those cases, and it's unsettling. You'd almost prefer a demon. At least you'd know the playbook. You begin the discernment process, as the Vatican demands. You ask Giovanni questions, simple ones, his name, his family, the day's weather. He answers slowly, his voice flat but correct. No growls, no taunts. You try a prayer, sprinkling holy water. Giovanni flinches, but it's more like discomfort than supernatural rage. You're frustrated, muttering to yourself, great. My exorcism's bombing, and I'm out of holy water. It's a weak joke, but it keeps you steady. Maria's watching, desperate for a miracle, but you're not sure you've got one. You're starting to think Giovanni needs a doctor, not a priest. And that's a dangerous thought for Matteo. You step outside with Maria, the night air cool on your face. She's clutching her shawl, begging you to save him. You're gentle, but you ask about Giovanni's health, any injuries, fevers, changes before this started. She hesitates, then admits he fell from a ladder months ago, hit his head. You feel a sparkhead trauma could explain this, couldn't it? Fact check. The Vatican's 1999 exorcism guidelines require medical evaluations to rule out neurological or psychiatric causes, a rule rooted in 20th century cases where epilepsy was mistaken for possession. Quirky tidbit? In the 19th century, some priests used magnets, believing they could pull demons from the brain. You picture Matteo waving a magnet over Giovanni and chuckle nervously. Science wasn't their strong suit. You're back inside. Giovanni now pacing. His mutters. Louder, more frantic. You're trying to stay calm, but Matteo's doubt is yours now. Is this possession? Or is Giovanni's mind unraveling? You recall a lecture from training. Dissociative disorders, schizophrenia, even temporal lobe epilepsy can mimic demonic signs. You're no doctor, but you're starting to lean that way. You try another test, holding up a relic, a sliver of bone said to be St. Peter's. Giovanni stares, uninterested, no reaction. A demon would have recoiled, right? You're not sure anymore, and Matteo's faith is wobbling, his training clashing with what he sees. You're pulled into a meeting with Father Antonio, the village's senior priest, in the church sacristy. The air smells of wax and old books, a single candle flickering. Antonio's face is grim as you explain Giovanni's case. Be careful, he warns. The church wants certainty, but life's messy. You feel Matteo's frustration. Antonio's not helping, just piling on pressure. You argue, quietly, that Giovanni might need a hospital, not an exorcism. Antonio's eyes narrow. The bishop won't like that, he says. You're angry, but you get it. The church fears admitting error, especially after centuries of claiming authority over the unseen. Historians still argue whether the Vatican's caution saves souls or delays treatment. You're leaning toward the latter, and it's a lonely place. You're back at the farmhouse. Giovanni now in bed, sedated by a local doctor. Maria called behind your back. You're relieved, but also ashamed. Matteo's supposed to be the answer, not a bystander. The doctor, a gruff man named Dr. Rossi, pulls you aside. He's not possessed, he says bluntly. Probably a brain injury. You nod, but you're torn. Rossi shows you Giovanni's chart seizures, memory loss, all since the fall. You're convinced, but Matteo's not. He's been taught to trust the right, not science. You're in his head, feeling the tug of war. Faith versus reason, duty versus truth. You're walking through the village at dawn, the hills glowing pink. Matteo's praying, but it's mechanical, his heart elsewhere. You're with him as he writes a report for the bishop, recommending a medical evaluation over an exorcism. It's a bold move, one that could end his career. You're proud, but scared. Matteo's risking everything. You're pulled into a memory, his first day as a priest, vowing to serve. You feel his resolve, but also his fear of failing Giovanni, of failing God. You're back, and the report's done, sealed, sent. You're exhausted, just watching, but Matteo's living it. You're outside the farmhouse again, Maria thanking you, her eyes softer now. Giovanni's stable, heading to a hospital in Rome. You're relieved, but Matteo's not celebrating. He's questioning everything: his training, his faith, the church's rules. You joke to yourself, well, at least I didn't have to dodge flying furniture. It's a nervous laugh, because you know Matteo's not done. Giovanni's case wasn't possession, but it's left a mark, a crack in Matteo's certainty that the next demon, real or not, might exploit. You're walking away, the village waking up, but the weight of doubt follows you, heavier than any shadow. You're back in the Italian village, 1973, the morning sun casting long shadows over the cobblestone streets. Father Matteo's still reeling from Giovanni's case, his doubts about possession versus madness lingering like a bruise. But you're not dwelling on that now. You're stepping into a new scene, one where Matteo's tools, his holy arsenal, take center stage. You're in his small rectory room, the air smelling of wax and old wood as he prepares for another exorcism. Your hands brush against the leather satchel on his desk, heavy with sacred objects. You're about to uncover the Vatican's arsenal, the tools exorcists wield against the unseen, each one steeped in history and mystery. You open the satchel, your fingers grazing a cool metal crucifix, its edges worn smooth by countless priests. Matteo's beside you, his face tense, checking each item with a reverence that borders on fear. You pull out a vial of holy water, its glass etched with a tiny cross. You feel its weight, imagining Matteo sprinkling it, hoping it burns what's unholy. Next is a stole, purple and threadbare, the kind worn for confessions and exorcisms alike. You drape it over your shoulders, catching a faint whiff of incense. Matteo's muttering prayers, blessing each tool, and you're struck by how ordinary they seem, objects you'd find in any church. Yet here, they're weapons. You dig deeper, finding a small book, the Ritual Romanum, its pages dog-eared, its Latin text a lifeline. You flip through it, seeing Matteo's notes in the margins, steady voice. Avoid eye contact. You're in his head, feeling his reliance on these words, his trust that they'll hold against whatever's coming. There's also a rosary, its beads polished by years of nervous fingers. You clutch it, and Matteo's memory flashes. His mother giving it to him before seminary, her eyes wet with pride. You're back, and the rosary feels heavier, like it carries her faith too. Now you find something odd, a small silver box, no bigger than a matchbook. You open it, revealing blessed salt, its grains glinting in the candlelight. You're curious, and Matteo explains, his voice low. Salt purifies, protects. You're pulled into a lesson from his training. Father Vincenzo lecturing, salt's ancient, used by Romans to ward off evil. You're back, sprinkling a pinch, half expecting a demon to scream. Nothing happens, but you feel safer? Or maybe you're just hoping. Fact check. The Catholic Church has used blessed salt in rituals since the 3rd century, symbolizing preservation from corruption. Quirky tidbit? Some 17th century exorcists mixed salt with wine, believing the combo could confuse demons. You imagine Matteo trying that, and smirk, probably tasted awful. You're still in the rectory, but now you're holding a relic, a sliver of bone in a gold reliquary, said to be from Saint Benedict. You feel its weight, its history. Matteo's eyes linger on it, his faith pinned to this tiny fragment. You're in a memory, his training again. Vincenzo warning that relics are powerful but dangerous, amplifying an exorcist's strength or his failure. You're back, and the relic's cold against your skin, like it's watching you. You wonder if it really holds power, or if it's just Matteo's belief that does the heavy lifting. Historians still argue whether relics are divine conduits or medieval scams. You're not sure, but you're not letting go. You pull out one last item, a small bell, its chime soft but piercing. You ring it, and the sound cuts through the room's stillness, sharp and clean. Matteo smiles, rare for him, and says, "It wakes the soul." You're in another memory, a medieval text Vincenzo showed him, describing bells as demon repellents. You're back, ringing it again, half joking to yourself. Take that, evil spirits. It's silly, but the sound steadies you, like a lighthouse in fog. You're starting to see why these tools matter, not just for their power, but for the courage they give Matteo, a shield against the dark. You're outside now, walking with Matteo to a new case, a widow named Teresa, 60, who's been screaming at night, her family terrified. You're carrying the satchel, feeling its weight on your shoulder. The village is quiet, the hills cloaked in dusk. You're nervous, not just for Teresa, but for Matteo. Giovanni's case shook him, and these tools are all he's got. You're at Teresa's house, a squat stone building, its windows dark. Her son greets you, his face pale. She's upstairs, he whispers. You climb the creaky stairs, the satchel bumping against your hip, each tool a promise you're not sure you can keep. You're in Teresa's room, the air heavy with sickness and fear. She's in bed, her eyes darting, her hands clawing at the sheets. You set up, Matteo's hands steady as he places the crucifix on a table, sprinkles salt in a circle, and drapes the stole over his shoulders. You're watching, but you're also helping, handing him the holy water when he nods. He begins the rite, his voice firm. Exorcizo te. Teresa hisses, a sound that's not quite human, and you flinch, nearly dropping the rosary. You're in Matteo's head, feeling his focus, his fear, but also his trust in these tools. These fragile gifts of faith. Teresa's reaction grows, her body jerks. Her voice shifts, now deep, now shrill. You're holding the bell, ringing it when Matteo signals, its chime cutting through her screams. You're amazed. It's working. Or seems to. The holy water makes her writhe. The relic calms her, just for a moment. You're caught up, believing in the tools, in Matteo. But then Teresa laughs, a sound like breaking ice, and says, "Your toys won't save her." You freeze. Matteo's doubt creeping into you. Are these tools enough? Or are they just props in a losing fight? You're back in the room, the rite continuing, but the question lingers. Heavy as the satchel you carry, you're exhausted, the night dragging on, Teresa still fighting. Matteo's relentless, using every tool, his voice hoarse but unbroken. You're proud, but you're scared this arsenal's powerful. But it's only as strong as Matteo's will. You're outside again, dawn breaking, Teresa calmer, maybe free, maybe not. You're carrying the satchel back, its weight a reminder. These tools are Matteo's strength, but also his burden. You joke, well, at least the bell didn't break. It's a weak laugh, but it keeps you moving, knowing Matteo's arsenal will face darker tests, and you'll be there, holding the rosary, hoping it's enough. You're back in the Italian village, 1973, the dawn light fading as you leave Teresa's house, the weight of Matteo's satchel still on your shoulder. The exorcism tools, crucifix, holy water, relic did their job, or so you hope. But now, you're diving deeper into a new case that's not just about tools or prayers. You're standing outside a small cottage, its shutters rattling in the evening breeze, where Father Matteo faces his most chilling challenge yet, a named demon, an entity with a title and a terrifying power that makes Clara and Teresa's cases feel like warm-ups. Your heart's pounding, the air thick with the scent of wet stone and dread, as you prepare to confront something that knows it's being hunted. You follow Matteo inside, the cottage dim, lit only by a flickering oil lamp. The family's gathered, mother, a father, and uncle all avoiding your eyes. They're here for Sophia, 28, a schoolteacher who's been wrong since visiting a nearby ruin. You're in Matteo's head, feeling his nerves, his training screaming one word, caution. Named demons are rare, dangerous, not just possessing but commanding. You're at Sophia's bedside, her face pale, her hands twisting the blanket. She's still, but her eyes, God, her eyes are alive, too alive, glinting like they see through you. You clutch the satchel, wishing the rosary could stop your shaking. Matteo begins, his voice low, testing the waters with a simple prayer. Pater, Noster. Sophia's head snaps up, and she speaks, not in Italian, but something older, guttural. You're late, priest, she says, and your stomach drops. She names herself Asmodeus, a demon from ancient texts, linked to lust and wrath. You're, in Matteo's memory, a training lecture. Father Vincenzo warning about named entities. They know you before you know them. You're back, and Sophia's smiling, her voice now smooth, taunting. Matteo, you're scared. You feel his fear, but also his resolve. He's not running. Not yet. You're watching Matteo sit up, his tools arranged like a soldier's kit. Crucifix on the table, holy water ready, the St. Benedict relic clutched tight. He's chanting the rite of exorcism, but Asmodeus laughs, a sound that vibrates in your chest. Your toys are weak, Sophia says, her voice shifting male, female, childlike. You're unnerved, remembering Clara's taunts, but this is different. Sharper, like it's playing chess while Matteo's stuck at checkers. You're in Matteo's head, feeling his training kick in. Named demons lie, but their power's real. You're scared, muttering to yourself, great, I'm sidekick too. A priest in a demon's endgame. It's a nervous joke, but it keeps you grounded. Sophia's body jerks, not violently, but deliberately, like a puppet testing its strings. She speaks again, naming Matteo's sins. You envied Luca's confidence, didn't you? You're pulled into a memory Matteo in training, watching Luca nail a mock exorcism, his own attempts faltering. You're back, and Sophia's eyes are on you, or seem to be. You're no better, she says, and you flinch, wondering if that's for Matteo or you. Fact check. The Book of Tobit, a 3rd century BC text, names Asmodeus as a demon defeated by prayer and fasting, a precedent for exorcists. Quirky tidbit? Medieval exorcists sometimes burned sulfur to choke demons like Asmodeus, believing it mimicked hell's stench. You imagine Matteo with a sulfur match and smirk, probably not Vatican approved. You're back in the room, the air heavier, like it's resisting Matteo's prayers. He's using the relic now, pressing it to Sophia's forehead. She screams, a sound that's half human, half something else, and the lamp flickers, nearly dying. You're holding the holy water vial, ready to hand it over, but Sophia's gaze stops you. You'll lose her, she says, and you feel Matteo's doubt Sophia's a teacher, loved, not like Clara's isolation. You're in his head, feeling the stakes. Fail, and the village loses more than a soul. You're angry, wanting to shout at Asmodeus, but you're just a witness, clutching the vial like it's your lifeline. The demon shifts tactics, speaking in Sophia's voice, soft, pleading. Help me, Padre. You see Matteo hesitate, his crucifix lowering. You're in a memory, his first mass, a parishioner's kind words giving him strength. You're back, and it's a trap Asmodeus exploiting Sophia's humanity. Matteo recovers, chanting louder, but you're shaken. Historians still argue whether named demons are distinct entities or psychological projections of cultural fears. You're leaning toward the former, because Sophia's next move isn't human, she twists, her body bending at angles that make your stomach lurch, and names the uncle's secret you stole from the church. The uncle gasps, and you see the family fracture, just like Clara's village. You're hours into this, the room a battlefield. Matteo's relentless, using every tool, his voice raw. You're ringing the bell when he nods, its chime sharp against. Sophia's growls. The holy water burns her skin, or seems to, and the relic quiets her briefly. But Asmodeus isn't done. "I'll take you," it says, and you feel a cold weight, like it's speaking to you too. You're in Matteo's head, his fear of carrying this demon, like the forbidden's file warned. You're back, and Sophia's laughing, her eyes never leaving Matteo. You're exhausted, just watching, but he's fighting, his faith battered, but holding. You're at the edge of the room, dawn creeping through the shutters. Sophia's weaker, slumped, her breathing human again. Matteo's prayers slow, his hands shaking as he blesses her. You're hopeful, but not certain Asmodeus named itself. And that's power. You're outside now, the village stirring, Matteo. Pale, but standing. You joke. Well, at least I didn't get possessed, probably. It's a weak laugh, because you know Matteo's marked now, carrying the demon's name like a scar. The satchel's heavier, the tools spent, and you're both bracing for what's next, knowing a named demon doesn't just vanish. You're still in the Italian village, 1973. The morning air crisp as you walk away from Sophia's cottage. Father Matteo steps heavy with the weight of Asmodeus' name. The demon's taunts linger, but now you're shifting gears, diving into a different kind of battle, not spiritual, but political. You're in Rome, inside the Vatican's labyrinthine halls, where the scent of polished wood and incense masks a power struggle over exorcism itself. You're trailing Matteo as he navigates the church's internal debates, a world of whispered agendas and sealed orders that could make or break his mission. Your heart's racing, not from demons, but from the realization that the Vatican's own politics might be as dangerous as any entity. You're in a dimly lit office, its walls lined with leather-bound tomes, a portrait of Pius XII frowning from above. Matteo's standing before a desk, his cassock wrinkled, facing Monsignor Bellini, a sharp-eyed bureaucrat from the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith. Bellini's voice is smooth, but his words are knives. Your reports are troubling. Father, you feel Matteo's pulse quicken. He's here about Sophia, maybe Clara, maybe Giovanni. You're in his head, sensing his fear of being sidelined, his exorcism cases scrutinized, not for faith, but for politics. You're nervous, muttering to yourself, "Great, now I'm stuck in a holy HR meeting." It's a weak joke, but it keeps you steady. Bellini slides a file across the desk, Matteo's own, stamped under review. You catch glimpses, notes. On Clara's unresolved case, Giovanni's medical referral, Sophia's named demon. You're struck by the Vatican's reach, tracking every prayer, every doubt. Bellini leans forward, his glasses glinting. "Exorcisms invite scrutiny," he says. "We can't afford scandal." You get it. The church is walking a tightrope, balancing modern skepticism with ancient rites. Matteo's caught in the middle, his faith weaponized by men in mitres. You're angry, but you're also scared. Bellini's tone says Matteo's career hangs by a thread. You're pulled into a memory, Matteo's from a week ago, a letter from his bishop, warning him to tread lightly after Giovanni's case. You feel his frustration helping Giovanni meant defying protocol, and now he's paying for it. You're back, and Bellini's listing complaints. Villagers gossiping about Sophia, a local priest questioning Matteo's methods. You're in Matteo's head, his fear that Asmodeus' chaos wasn't just spiritual, but a spark for earthly distrust. Fact check. In the 1970s, the Vatican tightened exorcism oversight after high-profile cases sparked media frenzy, fearing loss of credibility. Quirky tidbit? Some bishops used coded telegrams, spiritus quistio, for possession cases. Keep exorcisms secret. You imagine Matteo decoding one and smirk cloak and dagger for Jesus. You're walking with Matteo through Vatican corridors, clerks scurrying, their whispers trailing you. You overhear a name, Father Lorenzo, the senior exorcist who helped. with Clara, now exiled to a Sicilian monastery. You're in a memory, Matteo's conversation with Antonio. Lorenzo pushed too hard, Antonio said, named too many demons. You're back, and you realize Lorenzo's fate is a warning step out of line, and the Vatican marries you. You're uneasy, sensing Matteo's next move could seal his own exile. You're in his head, his resolve hardening. He won't stop. Not for Bellini, not for politics. You're in a larger meeting now. A wood-paneled chamber, air thick with tension. Matteo's one of 6 priests, all exorcists, facing a panel of clerics. The topic: reforming exorcism protocols. One priest, Father Carlo, argues for stricter medical screenings, like Giovanni's case demanded. Another, Father Domenico, insists on tradition, claiming demons exploit doubt. You're watching Matteo, silent but burning to speak. You feel his conflict. Carlo's right, but Domenico's faith resonates. Historians still argue whether the Vatican's 20th century reforms strengthened exorcism or diluted its spiritual core. You're leaning toward dilution, but Matteo's torn, his loyalty to the right clashing with Giovanni's truth. You're back in the meeting, and Matteo finally speaks, his voice steady. We need both faith and reason. You're proud, but the panel's faces are stone. Bellini scribbles a note, and you catch a word. Reassignment. You're scared, sensing Matteo's on thin ice. You're in a memory, his training. Vincenzo warning, the church fears what it can't control. You're back, and the meeting ends, Matteo dismissed with a curt nod. You're walking with him, the Vatican's grandeur feeling like a cage. You're in his head, his anger at Bellini, his fear of losing his calling. You're angry too, wanting to shake the clerics, but you're just a shadow, watching. You're outside now, Rome's night alive with scooters and laughter, but Matteo's world is quiet. He's at a cafe, alone, his coffee untouched, writing a letter to his bishop, defending his methods. You're reading over his shoulder, feeling his passion. I fight for souls, not headlines. You're moved, but you know Bellini won't care. You're in a memory, Matteo's first exorcism, Clara's eyes haunting him. You're back, and you realize the Vatican's politics aren't just about control, they're about fear. Fear of what Matteo's fighting, fear of what they can't explain. You're exhausted, just watching, but Matteo's carrying it all. You're at the Vatican's edge, Matteo heading back to the village, his satchel heavier with defiance. You joke, well, at least he didn't get excommunicated. Yet, it's a nervous laugh, because you know the church's games aren't over. Bellini's watching, the files are piling up, and Matteo's next case could be his last. You're with him, the Roman stars above, and you're bracing for what's next. Knowing the real war isn't just against demons, it's against the men who hold the keys to Matteo's fate. You're back in the Italian village, 1973, the air heavy with the scent of wood smoke and autumn leaves. Father Matteo's left the Vatican's political quagmire behind, but the weight of Monsignor Bellini's scrutiny clings to him like damp cloth. Now you're stepping into a darker chapter, one that makes your stomach twist. You're outside a small house at the village's edge, its windows boarded, the silence unnatural. Inside is Anna, a 12-year-old girl whose possession is so harrowing, it's pushing Matteo to the brink. You're in his shoes, your heart pounding, as you face a child's torment and the chilling question. How can evil claim someone so young? You knock, and Anna's mother, Lucia, opens the door, her face gaunt, her eyes hollow from sleepless nights. She's worse, she whispers, leading you inside. The house smells of stale bread and fear, its walls papered with faded flowers. You hear a low hum from upstairs, not a song, but something that raises the hairs on your neck. You're in Matteo's head, his training screaming caution children's cases are rare, delicate, often misdiagnosed. But Anna's symptoms, listed in Lucia's trembling voice screams, visions, speaking in tongues match the Vatican's checklist for possession. You're scared, not just for Anna, but for Matteo, who's still raw from Sophia's demon naming itself. You climb the stairs, each creak louder than your heartbeat. Anna's room is small, a single candle flickering on a dresser cluttered with dolls. She's on the bed, her dark hair tangled, her body curled tight. You expect wild eyes, but hers are closed, her breathing shallow. You're relieved, but only. For a second her head snaps up, and she speaks, her voice too deep, too old. "You're back, priest." You flinch, Matteo's crucifix heavy in your hand. This isn't Anna, and you know it. You're in his head, feeling his dread. A child, possessed, is a demon's cruelest trick, twisting innocence into a weapon. You set up, Matteo's hands steady as he places the crucifix, sprinkles holy water, and begins the rite. Exorcizo. Te. Anna, or whatever's inside her, laughs, a sound like splintering wood. "She's mine," it says, and your gut twists. You're pulled into a memory, Matteo's training, Father Vincenzo warning, demons love the young may. Break the priest's heart. You're back, and Anna's body jerks, her small frame straining against invisible chains. You're in Matteo's head, his fear for Anna clashing with his duty to fight. You mutter to yourself, "Great, now I'm fighting a demon and crying over a kid." It's a weak joke, but it keeps you from bolting. The entity's relentless. Speaking in Latin, then Aramaic, languages Anna, a farmer's daughter, shouldn't know. You'll fail her, it taunts, naming Matteo's doubts. Clara, Giovanni, Sophie, all lost. You feel his guilt, each name a wound. You're in. A memory, Clara's unresolved case, her eyes haunting him. You're back, and Anna's staring, her gaze piercing. "You're weak," she says, echoing Asmodeus. Fact check. The Vatican's 1614 Ritual Romanum notes that demons often target children to mock God's creation, a tactic seen in cases like Annalise Michel in the 1970s. Quirky tidbit? Some medieval exorcists used blessed toys, believing they could lure demons from children. You imagine Matteo with a holy teddy bear and smirk desperate times. Weird measures. You're hours into the exorcism, the room a battlefield. Anna's screams fill the air, her body twisting, her small hands clawing at the bed. You're holding the relic, St. Benedict's bone, passing it to Matteo when he nods. He presses it to her forehead, and she shrieks, a sound that shakes the walls. You're amazed, but also terrified. The relic's working, but Anna's suffering. You're in Matteo's head, his heart breaking. Is he saving her or hurting her? You're angry, wanting to scream at the demon, but you're just a witness, gripping the rosary like it's your anchor. The family's downstairs, Lucia sobbing, her husband pacing. You're pulled into their pain, their fear that Anna's gone. Forever. You're back, and the entity shifts tactics, using Anna's voice, soft, pleading. "Padre, it hurts." You see Matteo falter, his prayer stumbling. You're in a memory, his childhood, comforting his sister after a fall. You're back, and it's a trap, the demons exploiting Anna's innocence. Matteo recovers, chanting louder, but you're shaken. Historians still argue whether child possessions are demonic or psychological trauma amplified by family stress. You're leaning toward the former, because Anna's next move isn't human. She levitates, just inches, her body hovering before crashing down. You gasp, Matteo's eyes wide, the family screaming below. You're deeper in now, the candle burned to a stub, the room cold, despite the summer night. Matteo's relentless, using holy water, the bell, every tool, but the demon's strong, its voice a growl. "She's mine forever." You feel Matteo's despair, his fear that Anna's too young to fight back. You're in his head, his faith fraying, Giovanni's case whispering. What if this is madness, not evil? You're back. And Anna's quieter, her body limp, but her eyes still glint, watching. You're exhausted, just watching. But Matteo's carrying the weight, his voice hoarse, his hands trembling. You're at the edge of the room, dawn creeping through the shutters. Anna's breathing slows, her face softening, but you're not. Sure, she's free. Matteo blesses her, his voice breaking, and collapses in a chair, spent. You're proud, but terrified. This was too close, too cruel. You're outside now, the village waking. Matteo pale, Lucia thanking him through tears. You joke, well, at least the bed didn't catch fire. It's a nervous laugh, because you know Anna's case has scarred Matteo, a wound deeper than Clara's or Sophia's. You're walking away, the rosary still in your hand, bracing for what's next, knowing a child's torment has changed Matteo forever. You're still in the Italian village, 1973, the morning sun weak through a haze of clouds. Father Matteo's steps are heavy as he leaves Anna's house, the child's possession, a battle against a demon claiming her young soul leaving him. Hollow. You're in his shoes, the rosary in your pocket a cold comfort, but now you're facing a new weight, Matteo's breaking point. You're diving into his unraveling faith, his spirit battered by Anna's torment and the Vatican's looming. Scrutiny. The air smells of dew and doubt as you walk toward the church, your heart heavy with the fear that Matteo might not survive this, not physically, but spiritually. You enter the rectory, its dim room a refuge that feels more like a cage. The scent of old books and wax clings to the air, the crucifix on the wall watching you. You slump into a chair, Matteo's exhaustion yours, your hands trembling as you set down the satchel. Anna's eyes, those glinting, unnatural eyes haunt you, her small voice pleading, then growling. You're in Matteo's head, his thoughts a storm. Did I save her? Was it even a demon? You feel his faith fraying, the training that once angered. Him now, a rope burning his hands. You mutter to yourself, great, I'm a priest having an existential crisis. It's a weak joke, but it keeps you from crumbling. You're staring at the ritual Romanum on the desk, its pages worn, its promises less certain. You open it, tracing Matteo's notes. Trust the right. God is near. But they feel hollow after Anna. You're pulled into a memory. Matteo's first day in the village, his heart full of purpose, vowing to fight evil. You're back. And that fire's gone, replaced by a gnawing question. What if I'm wrong? You're scared, not just for Anna, but for Matteo, whose calling is slipping through his fingers. You're in his head, his doubt a weight heavier than any demon's taunt. You're interrupted by Father Antonio, the old priest, knocking softly. He enters, his face lined with worry, carrying a tray of bread and wine. You need strength, he says, but his eyes say he sees your struggle. You try to smile, but it's forced. Antonio sits, his voice gentle. Every exorcist faces this. You're grateful, but his words don't soothe. You're in a memory, Antonio's own story, years ago, a case that left him weeping in this. Same room. You're back, and Antonio's hand on your shoulder feels like pity. You're angry, wanting to scream, but you just nod, sipping the wine. It's bitterness matching your mood. You're alone again, the rectory silent. You pull out a letter from Monsignor Bellini, received days ago, its words cold. Cease independent action. Await instruction. You feel Matteo's rage, the Vatican's tying his hands while Anna suffers. You're in his head, his fear that Bellini's watching, waiting for a misstep. Fact check. In the 1970s, the Vatican's Congregation for the Fa, Doctrine of the faith often disciplined exorcists who defied protocol, fearing public backlash. Quirky tidbit? Some priests hid exorcism reports in coded diaries, using phrases like soul care to dodge scrutiny. You imagine Matteo scribbling one and smirk sneaky, but desperate. You're walking to the church now, the village quiet, its people avoiding your eyes. You're in Matteo's head, feeling their whispers. He failed Anna. He's too young. You're stung, remembering Giovanni's case when you chose medicine over the right. You're in the church, kneeling before the altar, the air cool, the stained glass glowing faintly. You pray, but the words feel empty, like shouting into fog. You're pulled into a memory, Matteo's ordination, his heart soaring as he vowed to serve. You're back, and that vow's a chain now, binding him to a fight he's not sure he can win. You're back in the rectory, night falling, a storm brewing outside. You're writing a journal, Matteo's hand shaking. I saw God in Anna's. Pain, but where was he in mine? You feel his despair, his faith not gone, but cracked like glass holding against a storm. You're in a memory, his mother's voice telling him, God tests the strong. You're back, and you're not sure you're strong enough. Historians still argue whether exorcists' crises of faith stem from spiritual warfare or the psychological toll of their work. You're leaning toward both because Matteo's breaking, and you're breaking with him. You're interrupted by a knock. Lucia, Anna's mother, her face pale. She's better, she says, but her eyes beg for reassurance. You're relieved, but Matteo's not convinced Anna's calm could be a demon's trick. You're in his head, his fear that he's failed her, that his doubt weakened the right. You're gentle with Lucia, promising to visit, but your voice shakes. You're alone again, the storm outside raging, thunder shaking the walls. You're in Matteo's head, his faith a flickering candle, Anna's case the wind threatening to snuff it out. You're exhausted, just watching, but Matteo's living it, his soul on the line. You're at the window, rain lashing the glass, the village. Dark. You're praying, not the right, but a child's prayer, simple, desperate. God, don't leave me. You feel Matteo's tears, his fear that he's alone, that the Vatican, the village, even God, has turned away. You're in a memory, his childhood, praying with his sister under a storm like this. You're back, and you're clinging to that memory, hoping it's enough. You joke. Well, at least I didn't renounce my vows, yet. It's a nervous laugh, because you know. Matteo's at the edge, and Anna's case has pushed him closer to falling than any demon ever could. You're still in the Italian village, 1973, the storm outside the rectory raging, its thunder a grim echo of Father Matteo's crumbling faith. Anna's case has left him shattered, his soul bruised by doubt and the Vatican's cold oversight. But now you're pulling back, stepping out of Matteo's personal torment to trace a broader, stranger pattern. You're no longer bound to the village. You're chasing whispers of possession cases across continents, from Europe's ancient hamlets to Africa's bustling cities and Asia's quiet shrines. Your heart races as you uncover eerie similarities, a global thread of darkness that hints at something bigger than Matteo's battles. The air smells of old maps and mystery as you dive into this unseen network of spiritual chaos. You're in Matteo's rectory, but it's different, now a makeshift war room. The desk is buried under letters, newspaper clippings, and scribbled notes, all from priests worldwide. You're in Matteo's shoes, your fingers stained with ink as you piece together reports he's collected, defying Monsignor Bellini's orders to stay quiet. You open a letter from Father Quaim in Ghana, 1972, a teenage boy in Accra, speaking in tongues, naming sins of villagers he'd never met. You feel a chill. Clara did that. You read another, from Sister Maria in Manila, 1971. A woman levitating, cursing in a dead dialect. You're in Matteo's head, his realization hitting hard. These aren't isolated. They're connected. You're pulled to Ghana, standing in a dusty market square, the air thick with spices and sweat. You're with Father Quame, watching the boy Kofi, tied to a chair in a mud-brick church. His eyes glint, just like Anna's, and he snarls. You're too late, priest. You're struck by the echo Sophia's demon said that. Quane's crucifix shakes as he prays, the crowd outside chanting. You're back in the rectory, Matteo underlining Kofi's case. Symbol on arm, not a tattoo. You freeze, remembering Clara's file, that jagged circle. You're in Matteo's head, his pulse racing. Is this the same entity, or a legion wearing the same mask? You're in Manila now, 1971, the humid air clinging to you. You're with Sister Maria in a candlelit chapel, the woman, Lita, hovering. Inches off the floor, her laughter sharp as glass. You're terrified, but Maria's steady, her rosary a lifeline. Lita's arm bears the same symbol, scratched into her skin. You're back, flipping through Matteo's notes, finding a 1969 case in Poland. A farmer, Jan, with the symbol carved into his door, his voice naming a demon Asmodeus. You're shaken, the name a knife in your gut. You're in Matteo's head. His fear that this isn't random, that something's coordinating these cases across oceans and years. You're digging deeper, the rectory's lamp flickering. You find a 1970 report from Mexico. A girl, Rosa, possessed after visiting a ruined temple, her symptoms mirroring Anna's visions. Unnatural strength. The symbols there, etched in stone at the site. You're in Mexico, standing amid crumbling ruins, the air heavy with rot. You feel watched, just like Matteo at Clara's shrine. You're back, and Matteo's notes are frantic. Why the symbols? Why now? You're in his head, his theory forming. These aren't just possessions. They're markers, a global surge, of darkness testing the church's defenses. You're pulled to a memory. Matteo's conversation with Father Antonio. The world's changing, Antonio said. Evil finds new doors. You're back, and you get it. Post-war turmoil, cultural shifts, faith waning. You're reading a letter from Father Hans in Germany, 1973. A surge in cases, all with the symbol. You're in Matteo's head, his. Dread that this pattern's escalating, and he's just one priest already breaking. Fact check. The 1970s saw a documented rise in exorcism requests worldwide, tied to social upheaval and occult fascination. Quirky tidbit? Some African exorcists used blessed palm fronds, believing they swept demons away. You picture Matteo, with a frond and smirk desperate, but creative. You're in a church in Poland now, 1969, watching Father Stefan battle Jan's possession. The symbol's on the door, and Jan's voice is Asmodeus, mocking, "You're all too late." You're back, and Matteo's circling the symbol in every report, his hand shaking. You're in his head, his fear that this is a coordinated attack, not random evil. Historians still argue whether global possession spikes are supernatural or mass hysteria fueled by cultural stress. You're leaning toward the former, because the symbol's too consistent, too precise, across continents and decades. Exhausted, the rectory a blur of papers and shadows. You're in Matteo's head, his resolve hardening. He'll report this to the Vatican. Bellini be damned. You're proud, but scared defying orders could end him. You're in a memory. Matteo's training, Vincenzo warning, evil works in patterns. You're back, and you're sure Vincenzo was right. You're packing the notes, preparing to face Bellini. The storm outside quieter now. You joke. Well, at least I'm not chasing demons across time zones. It's a nervous laugh, because you know Matteo's onto something huge, and the global pattern's closing in, with him and you at its center. You're back in the Italian village, 1973. The rectory's lamplight dim as Father Matteo stuffs his global case notes into a satchel, the mysterious symbol tying possessions across continents burning in his mind. You're no longer chasing patterns across the world. You're diving into the heart of the unseen war, the spiritual battle Matteo's been fighting all along. You're in his shoes, standing in the church's shadowed nave, the air thick with incense and dread, as you glimpse the stakes of this conflict, not just souls, but the balance between light and dark. Your heart pounds, the weight of eternity, pressing down as you confront what's really at stake in Matteo's exorcisms. You're kneeling before the altar, the crucifix above you gleaming faintly, its silence louder than any sermon. You're in Matteo's head, his thoughts a tangle of fear and defiance after Anna, Sophia, and the global cases. You feel his realization. Every exorcism is a skirmish in a war older than Rome, one the church barely acknowledges. You're clutching the Ritual Romanum, its pages a shield, but you know it's not enough. You're scared, muttering to yourself, "Great, I'm a foot soldier in a cosmic cage match." It's a weak joke, but it keeps your knees from buckling. You're pulled into a memory. Matteo's training, Father Vincenzo's voice low. Exorcism isn't just saving souls, it's holding the line. You're back, and you get at this. War's not about Clara or Anna, but what they represent. A breach in the world's spiritual defenses. You're in the rectory now. Matteo rereading his notes, the symbol's jagged lines staring back. You feel his dread. Each case, Ghana, Manila. Poland is a move in a larger game, and he's just a pawn. You're in his head, his fear that the demons aren't just testing him, but preparing for something bigger. You're walking through the village at dusk, the hills cloaked in mist, the air smelling of rain and secrets. You're heading to a new case, an old man, Paolo, whose family claims he's possessed after visiting the same cursed shrine as Clara. You're in Matteo's head, his suspicion that the shrine's tied to the global pattern, its symbol a beacon for darkness. You're at Paolo's house, a stone cottage, its air heavy with sickness. Paolo's in a chair, his eyes glinting, his voice a growl. You can't stop it, priest. You're struck by the echo Asmodeus, Kofi, Lida, all saying it's too late. You're scared, but Matteo's resolute, his satchel open, tools. Ready. You begin the rite. Your voice steady. Exorcizo te. Paolo laughs, a sound like grinding stones, and names your sins. You doubted God after Anna. You flinch, the truth stinging. You're in a memory. Matteo weeping after Anna's exorcism, his faith cracking. You're back, and Paolo's body jerks, the symbol scratched into his arm. You're in Matteo's head, his realization. This war's personal, the demons targeting his weaknesses to weaken the church's line. Fact check. Catholic theology holds that exorcisms are part of the spiritual battle, rooted in Ephesians 6:12. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities. Quirky tidbit? Some 18th century exorcists wore iron rings, believing they grounded them against demonic currents. You picture Matteo with one and smirk fashionable, but useless. You're hours into the exorcism, the room a battlefield. Candles flickering like they're scared. Paolo's stronger than Anna, his voice shifting Italian, Latin, something older. You're using the relic, St. Benedict's bone, and it quiets him, but only for a moment. You're in Matteo's head, his fear that Paolo's case is the war's tipping point, the symbol a signal of escalation. You're angry, wanting to scream at the demon, but you're just a priest, your tools finite. You're pulled into a vision not yours, but Matteo's a fleeting glimpse of shadows moving, not in Paolo, but beyond, a legion waiting. You're back, and you're shaking, the unseen war no longer abstract. You're at the edge of the room, the family praying, their voices. A faint anchor. Paolo's weakening, his body slumping, but his eyes still glint, promising more. You're in Matteo's head, his resolve. He'll fight, even if it breaks him. You're proud, but terrified. This war's bigger than one priest, one village. Historians still argue whether spiritual warfare is divine truth or a metaphor for human fear. You're leaning toward truth, because Paolo's next words aren't human. The gates open. You're frozen, a shrine symbol flashing in your mind, a key to something awful. You're outside now, dawn breaking, Paolo calmer, maybe free, but you're not sure. The village stirs, unaware of the war you're fighting. You're in Matteo's head, his exhaustion, his vow to keep going, even as Baleni's orders loom. You're carrying the satchel, its weight a reminder. This isn't just about Paolo, but every soul, every case, every symbol. You joke, well, at least I didn't sign up for Armageddon. It's a nervous laugh, because you know Matteo's in the thick of it, and the unseen war's next move is coming, with you along for the ride. You're back in the Italian village, 1973, the dawn light pale as you leave Paolo's cottage, Father Matteo's satchel, heavy with tools and the weight of an unseen war. The global pattern of possessions, the recurring symbol, and the demons. Chilling words. The gates open, have pushed Matteo to the edge of his endurance. Now you're stepping into the final case in his forbiddens file, the one that ties Clara, Anna, Sofia, and Palalo together. You're in Matteo's shoes, standing outside the cursed shrine where it all began, the air thick with rot and dread. Your heart pounds as you resolve this last file, but lingering doubts cling like shadows, whispering that this isn't truly over. You're at the shrine, its ancient stones jagged under a moonless sky, the symbol carved deep into their surfaces. You're clutching the ritual Romanum, its pages worn, your flashlight beam trembling as it catches the circle's cruel lines. You're in Matteo's head, his realization that this place is the key Clara's possession started here, and Paolo's. 2. You feel his resolve, brittle but unbroken, to end this, to close whatever gate the demon meant. You're scared, muttering to yourself, "Great, I'm shutting down hell's front door with a prayer book." It's a weak joke, but it keeps your feet moving. You step closer, the shrine's air colder, heavier, like it's pushing you back. You're in a memory, Matteo's, from Clara's file. Her visit here, her laughter turning to screams. You're back, and you notice fresh marks, scratches, not weathered, as if someone else came recently. You're in Matteo's head, his fear that the shrine's active, drawing victims like a trap. You begin the rite, your voice steady despite the chill. Exorcizo te. The stones seem to hum, a low vibration you feel in your bones. You're not alone, and you know it's something's watching, not human, not animal. You're setting up, placing the crucifix on a stone, sprinkling holy water that hisses as it hits the ground. You're in Matteo's head, his training screaming. Consecrate the space, break the symbol's power. You're using the Saint Benedict relic, pressing it to the largest carving, and the hum grows louder, almost a growl. You're pulled into a vision not yours, but Matteo's a flash of Clara, Sofia, Anna, Paolo, their faces twisted, the symbol pulsing behind them. You're back, and you're shaking, the relic warm in your hand, like it's fighting too. You're in Matteo's head, his certainty. This shrine's a focal point, a crack in the world where evil slips through. You're chanting louder, the bells chime cutting through the night, its sound sharp against the hum. You're in a memory. Father Antonio's warning. Some places are wounds evil festers there. You're back, and you get it. This shrine's no accident. Its stone's older than the village, maybe older than Rome. You're in Matteo's head, his theory. Global cases, the symbol, all trace back to places like this. Ancient sites turned profane. Fact check. Early Christian texts, like the 4th century Acts of the Apostles, describe unclean sites cleansed by prayer, a precedent for exorcising places. Quirky tidbit? Some medieval priests buried blessed nails in cursed ground, believing they pinned evil down. You picture Matteo with a hammer and smirk, old school, but tempting. You're deeper into the rite, the air thickening, the flashlight flickering. You're in Matteo's head, his fear that this is bigger than him, that Bellini's orders to stop were meant to keep this buried. You're angry, wanting to defy the Vatican, but you're just a priest, your tools finite. You're sprinkling. Salt now, its grains vanishing into the stones, and the hum falters, just for a second. You're hopeful, but then the ground shakes not violently, but enough to make you stumble. You're in Matteo's head, his doubt. Is this working? Or is the gate opening wider? You're scared, the symbol glowing faintly. Or maybe it's your imagination. You're hours into this, the night endless, your voice hoarse, the relic heavy. You're in a memory, Matteo's childhood, praying with his mother under a starry sky, her faith uncheckable. You're back, and you cling to that, chanting louder, invoking Saint Michael. Defend us in battle. The hum stops, the air still, and you feel a shift, like a weight lifting. You're in Matteo's head, his relief. The shrine's cleansed, or seems to be. You're exhausted, collapsing against a stone, the crucifix cool in your hand. You're in Matteo's head, his doubt lingering. Did I close the gate, or just delay it? You're walking back to the village, dawn breaking, the hills soft with light. You're in Matteo's head, his resolve to report this, to warn others, even if Bellini buries him. You're proud, but uneasy the file's resolved. But the symbol's still out there, in Ghana, Manila, Poland. Historians still argue whether such sites are demonic hubs or cultural fears etched into stone. You're leaning toward the former, because the shrine's silence feels like a pause, not an end. You're at the rectory, Matteo writing his final report, the satchel empty, his faith scarred but holding dot as the morning grows brighter. You feel the weight of Matteo's journey ease, like a long exhale. You're sitting by the rectory window, the village waking, its sounds children laughing, carts creaking soft and grounding. You're in Matteo's head, his heart quieter now, the war's roar fading to a hum. You imagine the shrine, it's stone still, the symbol dulled by dawn's light. The doubts linger, but they're softer, like whispers you can ignore. You're safe here, the story settling, the darkness retreating to its corners. Let the world turn, let the stars rise. You've walked through shadows and come out whole. Close your eyes, let the village's hum carry you, and rest, knowing you've faced the unseen and lived.